Hello, everyone. Welcome to a somber, unplanned episode of Smug and Play. This isn't about the state of the channel. We are just normally slow getting out new videos about PC Gamer demos, but something happened that prompted Alan and I to want to record a special episode. And what happened was the demise of longtime electronics retailer Fry's Electronics that announced that they'll be closing all their stores and ceasing all operations. So now a lot of you may be seeing outpourings of grief that seem facetious on social media, in the tech enthusiast news. And we wanted to sort of have a quick talk about our personal experiences with Fry's, and also I wanted to, for our viewers who weren't in the Silicon Valley at the turn of the millennium, don't really understand the significance of this, I want to put together an argument to try to convey to you, our listeners, our beloved listeners and viewers in Canada and in Eastern Europe, why this is important, why this should matter to you, why you should care about the loss of an electronics retailer. I mean, nobody really cared. CompUSA, goes belly up. Would anyone care too much? Would anyone shed too many tears if Best Buy were to disappear? It's arguable, but I've argued that there are at least three reasons why anyone who's really invested in personal computing and the sort of stuff
before you go into the three reasons, can we just pour one out here?
Let's just pour one out. Yeah. Now you may remember. You may remember in the last episode of Smug and Play, Alan poured his tea while demonstrating the new Smug mug. He poured his tea onto his laptop keyboard. Thankfully, the laptop was salvaged. Is this correct?
The Ryzen has risen, but this time you're going to have to add this digitally. I'm giving you a lot of work.
Right. Okay. Well,
stream of yellow liquid.
We'll get the editors from the Chappelle Show who did the R. Kelly
digital.
The R. Kelly bit. Yeah. We'll see if they're available. We'll contact Chappelle's people. We'll see if we can do it. It's a very similar job, right? So, okay. Let me give you three reasons, listicle format, why you should care about Fry's Electronics closing, why it's different than just any other retailer going belly up in this day and age. Reason number one, from the outset, from its founding, Fry's wasn't just about making a buck by selling electronics. The Fry's brothers were these eccentric, people from California. Their parents owned a grocery business, and they used the money from that grocery business to open an electronics chain. But these weren't people who were just, had business savvy and were trying to take advantage of a market opportunity. Obviously, a lot of people wanted to buy electronics in California in the late 1980s and early 90s. But John Fry, especially, was really a scholar and patron of science, mathematics, and technology. He's, in addition to the founder of Fry's Electronics, the founder of the American Institute of Mathematics. He has an international reputation as being a patron of math and science throughout the world. He kept correspondence between George Ohm and Albert Einstein in a locked safe in his office. He was the one who hosted a gala dinner for the mathematician who finally solved Fermat's enigma. When he went to the Bose research facility, Dr. Amar Bose, the founder of Bose, the company, knew him by name and gave him a special personal tour of all of their research facilities and everything that they're up to. This is a guy who has a great reputation, and he really had a vision for what technology and math were doing in the modern world and wanted to bring that to people and basically accelerate the propagation of those things. So this isn't just any old retail institution. They made some decisions that were probably not in the best interest of the company business-wise, but made Fry's more of the institution we remember it for. So that's number one. It's not just any...
So the Fry's brothers could have made more money selling high-end AV equipment or pre-built PCs only, but they really wanted to allow you to buy and build components for your personal computer and put it together and all that stuff.
And to be able to directly interact with them. They could have made a lot more money in terms of, how much sales volume they had for amount of retail space. They didn't open up these gigantic warehouses with huge displays and demonstrations of every single product. So reason number two, which draws on sort of what we're talking about here, is that Fry's wasn't just a typical retailer in terms of the experience that you had. It wasn't just Bizarro World Best Buy. It had character, and it had a role in the Silicon Valley as a crossroads of people who were involved with two simultaneous revolutions in internet technology, in information technology, and in personal computing technology. So you look at where these stores are. They're in Palo Alto, Sunnyvale, San Jose. You got people from Apple rubbing shoulders with people from NVIDIA, rubbing shoulders with people from Sega, from Electronic Arts, from Oracle, from Sun, from Silicon Graphics. They're all at Fry's, and they're all looking at each other's products because they have these big product demonstrations and displays, and they're excited to see their products on the shelves. They're interested in what competitors are doing, and everyone's sort of getting an appreciation for their own contributions to what's going on at the turn of the millennium in the Silicon Valley. And each of these stores had character. They were unique. They had themes. I wrote down some. So the one we went to in Palo Alto was an Old West theme. We had sci-fi monster movies in Burbank. We had ancient Rome in Fountain Valley, an Aztec temple in Phoenix, Arizona, and ancient Egypt in Campbell. This theme, it wasn't just the facade. They had like weird, weird setups and almost like kids museum type installations within the stores themselves. But it was a place to go and to really get to take part in what was happening in technology. It was a destination itself. Maybe we weren't going there to buy anything. So that kind of takes me to part number 3, which is an important part, and that is that Fry's let everyone get hands-on with the latest technology. It wasn't just like a big box store where you had stacks of merchandise or you pulled the tag for something and you went and checked out. I mean, they had that as well for CPUs and other small high-value items. But when you went to the computer section of Fry's Electronics, you hooked a left when you came in the door at the Palo Alto store, there were just rows and rows of every single computer they had for sale set up, running, and there for you to fool around with and play with and see what was going on. And it was similar in other areas as well. When they sold motherboards, they didn't just have motherboards in their boxes behind locked glass like they do at Best Buy. They had the bare boards out within reach so you can look at them and decide which one has the best build quality, which one has capacitors that are most or least likely to explode in the next 4 seconds. The board layout, the VRM, you can assess all of that. You can get hands-on with all of that. And it was clearly...
that was unique to motherboards, but I guess it did sort of apply to other things because they had so much open box return stuff that was like the box had disintegrated into just threads, and so you could see through as well to those components.
It had colorful wires hanging out of the edges and things like that, and the holes and bizarre knife cuts that were in it.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the low lights, the downsides, the dark parts of Fry's in a later portion of this show. But right now we're just trying to keep it light. We're trying to remember the good parts of our dearly beloved departed Fry's Electronics.
Right.
So I want to make the argument that
we have to summarize. So your argument is that Fry's is like the temple of Silicon Valley.
Yes.
That we all worship at,
yes.
the altar of technology.
Yes.
And it's a community where we all come to just honor technology and its beauty and its
and to honor each other and our contributions to this shared revolution in personal computing. I would argue.
Yeah, I mean, you talked before show about how it's kind of like a museum.
It is, but it's a museum to the current moment, to this day in technology history. And when we talk about our personal experiences, I'll talk about some of my personal experiences, just things that blew me away that I saw in Fry's Electronics that I've never have seen anywhere else.
Okay.
I don't mean...
I'm prepared for that.
You think that I'm going to talk about the return experience. You're wrong. Or the adult magazine section in the front right. No, I'm not talking about that either.
The CPU and memory upgrades.
Oh yeah.
When they did it for you, yeah. Okay, yeah.
So I want to say that before we talk about personal stories, we're not the only people to have really strong connections to Fry's Electronics. If you look back in 2019, former Apple executive Jean-Louis Gassee wrote about his experiences with Fry's that I think are really interesting. I'll tell two of his stories here before we talk about our stories. But Jean-Louis Gassee, he was the executive that took over Macintosh after Steve Jobs got kicked out. And he would then, in turn, be kicked out in 1990, and Michael Spindler would take his place, and ultimately he'd replace Scully and then basically take Apple to the brink of collapse in the mid-90s and the march to nowhere. But Jean-Louis Gassee, when he was kicked out of Apple, he was forced out of Apple, he talked to his friend John Fry. And because Jean-Louis Gassee had rose to prominence sort of in Apple retail and marketing in France, John Fry approached him about opening Fry's stores in France. And Jean-Louis Gassee, who was at that time planning to start B Inc., that would make the B-Box, BOS, which would be a contender for the future Macintosh operating system and very interesting technically in its own right, said that, well, I'm kind of getting my own venture going here, but you know what, I'll think about it, and while I'm thinking about it, I'll work as a cashier in the newly opened Sunnyvale store. Sunnyvale store opened in 1991, and so Jean-Louis Gassee for many months worked the counter there so that he could understand the business to think about whether or not he wanted to help open them in France. And Apple employees would come into the store and be like, "Whoa, Jean-Louis, is it that bad? Like, what happened to you, man? Like, you're working here?" And Jean-Louis would say, well, you have to pay the bill somehow. He would like kind of French it off. Well, that's sort of an interesting story. So you might have your, purchase checked out by a former Apple executive. That's cool. But another thing that happened is in '93, Jean-Louis Gassee had his carotid artery ruptured, and he had to have emergency surgery at Stanford Hospital. Nearly died. When he came out of it, and was dismissed from the hospital, he asked his wife if she could please drive him to Fry's Electronics so that he could just breathe in the smell of the motherboard section to help him come back to life. Jean-Louis Gassee is a real Fry's diehard. This guy loves Fry's, and that's what she did. So he still had clamps on his neck from the surgery. Wheeled him into the motherboard section, and he just sat there and just went. And he said after that he felt much better. So it was, like you said, it was a religious experience for some people. I'm not overselling it. A lot of people had a lot of personnel investment in it. Okay, that's enough for me talking about that. I want us to talk about our personal stories.
Sure. You wanted to talk about the Tour de Fries first, right? Which this is a summer event.
Yes.
Just like the Tour de France.
Yes.
We were young and students, and so we had summer off, and eventually we would get bored of whatever toys we had,
right.
Technology, and
initially we didn't have access to a vehicle. We didn't have a car.
Right. When we were young, so we would pick the hottest day of the summer and bike to Fry's, which was a 7.5 mile journey.
Yes, on our bikes to the Portage Road Fry's in Palo Alto in the horrible sun.
And we never brought water, so we were committed to having to purchase something at Fry's.
Right,
we would have to buy a beverage,
which means that you would have to go through the checkout, which would take you forever. Right. Which meant that you might as well buy something else while you're waiting in line to buy your beverage.
Sure. And then, we would come up with something else to buy. Early on, I don't know, we were in to Gran Turismo 2, and I think we went back with a car later to get a steering wheel by Mad Cats. That was that was one Tour de Fries outing. Do you remember some other game? Ones? I think Tropico was a purchase during one of those early ones. Mm-hmm. What did you get?
So I remember one of our Tour de Fries outings, we got we saw a setup there of Guitar Hero, the first Guitar Hero game. This was in 2005. And we saw somebody playing there, and we thought, this looks like fun. And we played it ourselves, and it was tons of fun. And so we bought the setup with the guitar. It was kind of big, very awkward thing to try to jam into your backpack. But we managed to get it home on our bikes, and we played Guitar Hero together and had a ton of fun. Other Tour de Fries. Did you get your Enforce 3 and Athlon 64 CPU Mobo bundle on a Tour de Fries?
It sounds like something I would have shoved in my backpack. I mean,
as
we've covered in an earlier video, the CPU motherboard combos were kind of the main draw of Fries for people who are really hands-on with computers. So they would have a CPU and then basically an ECS motherboard for free. And so we availed ourselves of that opportunity.
Yeah,
pretty much every year or so, just like, get the best $50 CPU.
Yeah, so what would normally happen is Sunday morning paper would come. We'd open it up. Fries would be advertising some absurd value. It would be a CPU and motherboard for less than the CPU itself would normally cost. And we'd say, and it would be usually be some sort of socket A Simpron or something like that. And I pointed this way, Alan, this is about 15% faster than your current computer. It only costs $40. We're going to go and get this now. And then we would put on our backpacks, hop on our bikes, and then bike 7 miles to go pick it up.
Yeah. And at some point I had to start bringing the newspaper because they would deny that it was on sale because they wanted you to buy. Everybody was on commission at Fry's,
right,
which I'm sure we'll discuss
else.
More. So they wanted you to get, some high-end Intel, 920X, Bad Axe, whatever motherboard.
Right.
And I'm like, no, I'm not in for that. All right.
Listen, I got $40 right here.
So I had to have
I want my Duron.
You're selling this. Give it to me. And he's like, fine, Because it would have the little number. You would enter it in and it would be like, fine, we'll sell it to you.
Yeah.
This is another purchase, my Zalman ALCU cooler.
Yes.
It's mounted on this car.
Zalman cooler. We could do a whole show on Zalman's. We talked a lot about the embezzlement case that occurred at Fry's and its relation to the CPU motherboard combos in our other video, which you should definitely watch if you're interested in learning more about Fry's electronics. Zalman, we could do another video on their own sort of embezzlement.
I didn't even know about that one.
Oh boy, it's more recent, but it's a juicy one too. Dig into that. So some other Tour de Fries pickups. In 2006, right before I started work at Apple, I biked down Fry's and I bought my Nintendo DS Lite, which I still own. Although when I bought it, it was all white. I've since suffered various component failures, which I have addressed myself with repair parts from eBay. But I still use this quite regularly. There was another Tour de Fries where I picked up a big box copy of BOS R5 Professional, which I proudly ran on my Pentium 2 450 for...
Was it signed by Jean-Louis Gassee?
I know, so that's my connection to Jean-Louis Gassee. I'm going to have to do a whole separate video about my love of BOS and such. Now, it was not signed by Jean-Louis Gassee. I've never met him. I've met some other people involved with BOS, but not him. One day, maybe. We'll see. But let's see. Other things I bought from Fry's. There was one summer where we biked over and saw, very uncharacteristic for Fry's, and we'll talk about their pricing later, but for only $19.99, they had Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater for PlayStation 2. And at the time, you and we had played the other Metal Gear Solid games, appreciated them. We were maybe uncritical fans of Hideo Kojima at that time. Somehow, I guess we'd been busy with school, hadn't heard that there was a third game in the series, had no expectations whatsoever, saw that it was cheap, bought it, and brought it home, and then played it together and discovered it was really one of the best games on the PlayStation 2, a really fantastic game, totally different than other entries in the series. So that was another good Fry's run. But do you remember, Alan, our very first visit to Fry's Electronics, the Palo Alto store, and why we went there?
Did it have to do with that laptop we
It
had?
did. It did,
Yes.
Alan.
Okay.
It had to do with that laptop and about something that we're soon going to be talking about in our normally scheduled Smug and Play PC Gamer demo explorations.
Yeah.
We moved to California, the Bay Area, California, in 1996, and we were staying in we stayed in a hotel, and then we were living in an apartment with our mother, and the only computer we had shared between us was this Canon 5X86 multimedia laptop.
It was the Innova Book 360 CD.
The
I mean, I
Innova Book
remember it very
360
well.
CD. We should pop that up on screen right now. This is a very important computer for us. The Innova Book, I believe it had a dual scan TFT. It did not have
Yeah, I mean,
active matrix.
I can like imagine the ghosting right now, just moving the cursor around the screen.
Ghosted like crazy. Now, Alan and I, of course, were subscribing to PC Gamer magazine at the time, and we knew that Quake was available. Quake had just been released, and we were incredibly excited for it, and we read in the system requirements for Quake that you had to have 16 megabytes of RAM. Now, this was a problem because our Notebook that we were sharing with our mother, only had 8 megabytes of RAM.
And I think we even tried it, and it was like completely glacially. I mean, it was glacially slow after the memory upgrade, but it was like unplayable.
I don't think it even worked.
Really?
With 8 megs, but I think it required the 16. So we looked for an electronics store nearby. We could get an extra 8 megs so that we could get Quake working. And that was why we first went to Fry's Electronics, that Portage Road, Palo Alto store. Had our first experience there. And
I think we had them upgrade the RAM.
Did we have them do it? We didn't feel confident to do it ourselves. I could totally imagine that at that point.
Yeah. So we probably waited there for some time.
Yeah.
Just breathing in that motherboard dust and lead solder or whatever.
Yeah. And so it wasn't, I don't know if it was that trip or if it was a subsequent trip
when Mom decided she would never go to Fry's again.
Okay, well that happened too. And we decided we always had to go.
I think that was a subsequent trip because we needed to get for that laptop a modem, right? Laptops didn't have modems back then.
Right, we had to get a
PCMCI card.
Yeah.
And the first one we bought definitely didn't work.
Oh yeah, it was it was some interesting brand. It was not US Robotics. I think we went back and went US Robotics after that.
Well, they were so expensive. I think we got kind of the wrong off-brand.
Yeah.
And I think we had to return it, and that was when Mom swore she would never go to Fry's again. So it wasn't very long that her relationship with Fry's broke down.
Right. It was perhaps on that trip, though, that I ventured into the computer section. I was interested in having a computer of my own, a modern computer of my own, and I obviously didn't have the money for it or anything like that, but I wanted to see what was on the market. And I saw in one of those rows of machines on the nearest part of it, the nearest to sort of the center of the store where they put their highest end stuff and all the sales associates were congregating trying to find their marks. There was a machine with a 3DFX Voodoo Graphics card playing the 3DFX demo with the two fighters in sort of Egyptian garb, I guess you would say, running.
It's like the Temple of Ra or something.
Yeah, this demo is famous, and when we talk about 3DFX, we'll talk about the significance of it and why it exists. But I saw that running on a machine that they had there right on the corner, and I was just floored. And on a subsequent trip there, they had that same machine running the Shadows of the Empire, Star Wars game by LucasArts, also using 3DFX Voodoo acceleration, and my mind was just absolutely blown. Having played 3D games on consoles at a lower frame rate, with sometimes without perspective correct texture mapping, without the same color depth, running at 60 frames per second, absolutely butter smooth, it was mind-blowing. It was high-end computer graphics suddenly in something that I could conceivably one day own, because we had also very early in moving to California visited Silicon Graphics and saw sort of what was happening in the professional side of things. But it was like an Onyx supercomputer. You're never going to own one of those, ever. You're lucky if you ever saw one. You're never going to touch one. But I saw that at Fry's, and then I had my heart set on it, and I eventually did get a 233 megahertz Pentium with a Voodoo card from Micron, not from Fry's. The first computer that I bought from Fry's...
To order, not from Fry's, for sure.
Not from Fry's. The first computer that I did buy from Fry's, that was the first new computer that I had in California, which I used for my late middle school or junior high for people sort of internationally, and in early sort of high school years, and that was a 200 megahertz Sony Vaio PC running Windows 98, or I don't think it was 98 at that time. Probably it was 95 OSR2.
Oh, this was 95.
Yeah.
And it was a big purple box.
Yeah.
Maybe you thought it was an SGI workstation.
Well, that's exactly. At that time, I longed for an Indigo or an Indy or some sort of SGI desktop workstation. And when I saw the big, purple plastic panels on Sony's Vaio line, my heart just sang, and I was like, you know what? It's close enough. It's got video capture. It's got some rudimentary 3D.
You did some sort of amateur film editing on this Vaio.
Yes, I did. I did some amateur film editing of little videos that my friends and I would come up with on it. And that was a great machine. I love that machine. That was the machine that I was first exposed to emulation on. I signed up to be a beta tester of Bleem, the early PlayStation emulator, also known as the best little emulator ever made. And the Bleem betas ran at full speed. I could play PlayStation games full speed on a 200 megahertz Pentium MMX. That was very surprising to me, especially because I believe it had integrated Rage 2C graphics. Not a incredibly performant machine, but surprisingly potent for well-written software. Other things. What else did I get from Fry's? Oh, I didn't talk about the time I went to Fry's to upgrade Connor's computer. Connor, who was on the podcast of the show talking about Dark Forces and other games. I'm sure you all miss him because he's actually interesting. He shared a computer with his older sister that was, I believe, an earlier Pentium, perhaps even a 486 machine. She had an exquisite selection of adventure games. She did the Discworld games, Day of the Tentacle, all the LucasArts games, the Dig, all of that stuff in these big CD binders. So she played on there, but Connor wanted to participate in the revolution in 3D home computer games around 1999.
This must have been like holiday season 99 that you showed up at Fry's and wanted your GeForce, the first GPU.
Right. So Connor's talking to me at school and he says, I got a little bit of money. I want to upgrade this computer to be able to play the latest games. I want to be on Unreal Tournament, I want to be able to, see what's going on now in 3D. This computer can't currently do that. And I had just been hot off of reading Tom's Hardware and Anantech. And so I was like, Connor, I've got it. Don't worry about it, buddy. And I had just read about A-Bit's BP6 motherboard. And you remember, I'm a BOS zealot. So I'm like, listen, Connor, in Windows 98, having two processors isn't going to do anything for you. But you got to think about the future, man. In the future, you're going to want it. Everything's going to be multi-threaded. Everything's going to sing with a multi-processor system. You don't want to, if this is all the money you got, you don't want to invest in a uniprocessor system. Not in 1999. I mean, the future is here. So I, of course, am selling him on the 8-bit BP6 motherboard, which uses basically unsupported, undocumented features of the Mendocino Celeron to support dual processors. And I think my plan initially that I've sold him on is to buy two Celeron 333As, OC them to 450 megahertz with 100 megahertz frontside bus, slap in the latest, just released NVIDIA GeForce 256. We're not even like DDR, we're talking SDRs. But the first GeForce 256, and we are going to play Dagoth Moor Zoological Gardens, which is a tech demo, not really a game. And we're going to see this hardware transform and lighting.
You were going to play episode 1 Pod Racer.
Right, exactly.
In its full glory, right?
Right, among the things we were going to do. And I said, Connor, just meet me at Fry's and we'll do this.
How did that plan go? Did
okay, so here's what I'll tell you what happened. So Connor and his mom show up, Portage Road fries, sort of equidistant between our homes. Very convenient. I don't know. I don't know if I bike there or if my mom drove me. I'm not sure at this point. But so we meet out in the front, get a big cart. And I said, all right, all we gotta do, this is what we need. We need to get the processors, we get the RAM, we get the logic board, we get the video card, shove it in your existing case, everything will be cool, no problems. And so, we go and we hook a left, go past all the modems and Palm Pilots and things, heading for that big shelf in the far left corner of the store, full of graphics cards. It's maybe 10 feet tall, maybe it's something like that. But, it's just a big shelf, every single graphics card available on the market. Looking for a GeForce 256.
Full of TNT2 M64.
Right, exactly. It's full of every brand of TNT2 M64. It's every single ATI Wonder product. Every all-in-Wonder product is available.
Expert at work, expert at
work, expert at play, expert at picking your nose, expert at all of the whole ATI product lineup. We're just searching everywhere. It's like, listen, the GeForce has been out for like at least a week now. There must be some here at Fry's. So we go through, and eventually we find, for some outrageous amount of money, one Lead Tech WinFast 256, the only GeForce 256 card available at Fry's at this time, and there's only one of them. There's not even a question. It's like, if we're doing GeForce 256, it is this. There's nothing else. And I remember the retail price being basically all of Connor's budget. But I was like, you know what? Doing it, We can't play Dagoth Moor Zoological Gardens unless we have hardware TNL. This is the only hardware TNL card that exists, so... and then you would never go to another store. You got Fry's. So slap that Lead Tech WinFast GeForce 256 card in the cart, turned around, started, try to avoid all the sales associates in the new PC section and said, nope, we're headed straight for Motherboard Town, which is, of course, on the opposite side of the store. So, we go through, past all the CDs and dirty magazines and everything and software, in the central, rows of the store, all the way to the other wall, the far right wall, to get the motherboard. Thankfully, the 8-bit BP6 is available. Again, not at maybe the best price in the world. Oddly, however, they are either sold out of Celeron 333As, or the price is not what's expected. Something has gone wrong with the plan. And somehow we end up coming home with a single Celeron 500, which I've somehow convinced Connor and his mother is like, okay, because, 66 megahertz front side bus is fine, and we might not have been able to overclock the 333A anyway, even though that's kind of the whole point of the BP6 board. And I don't know, I come up with some sort of hand-waving, hand-wringing explanation for why this is acceptable to only buy the one processor rather than the two that I had originally suggested. And we get some RAM, Fry's house brand. And
not even Patriot. Patriot was like
Patriot.
the other brand.
Patriot. Yeah, I don't even know what it was.
Born in the USA, made in China. Patriot RAM.
So we're vastly over budget. We're also off spec, and I think we planned at that point to just transport the sound card he had, whoever it was, into this new one. We still got ISA slots, so forward compatibility, backward compatibility, we're all good. We check out. It takes the usual 10,000 years that it does to buy anything that's in the cage section of Fry's. Sales associate, breathing down our necks the entire way. We get back to Connor's place, and we do eventually successfully assemble it. I don't recall if it was on this particular occasion that we actually successfully assembled this, but we eventually successfully assemble it. And we load up Dagoth Moor Zoological Gardens, and we play it, and somehow managed to be very impressed by its... If you go back and you play Dagoth Moor Zoological Gardens now, you almost can't see the interesting lighting effects for all of the horrible animation, and and just tech demoiness of it, it is not really an incredible experience. Like it's not it having like Shadows of the Empire running that like Hoth demo on 3DFX. That was a cool experience. This was kind of less so, really. But what happens after that is that Connor gets really busy with high school, as we all do. Doesn't really play the computer a lot. But his sister, who was in elementary school, I think at the time, younger sister, not his older sister, his younger sister, she is, basically unchallenged for time on this machine, takes an interest in Quake 3 Arena, which plays beautifully on the GeForce 256 and on the Celeron. It's well optimized. And she actually becomes a competitive Quake 3 Arena player using that machine as her rig. So I'm rather proud of that. And I don't know what happened to that computer. We have to talk to Connor about that. But it definitely played a role in her rise as a competitive Quake 3 Arena player. So that was another delicious Fry's story. Do you have any more?
Well, I'm proud that you were able to build. Like, I never built any computer really from scratch. I would go there for the CPU motherboard combo.
Yeah.
Sometimes for RAM, because back then you had to pay something called shipping if you wanted something ordered.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Which would ruin your deal on RAM. So if you just wanted, a $40 stick of RAM, you would go up to the sales associate who was kind of making all the bills of sale on his computer, and you'd be like, I want this. And he's like, this one's much faster for only double the price.
Yeah, that's right. And you'd be like, no, you don't understand. My computer doesn't support DDR memory. I cannot use that.
Yeah. I mean, the sales associates had very strong opinions that were very loosely based on fact.
Yes. Right. And why would you buy SDRAM when you can buy RDRAM?
Yeah. Right.
Well, sir, I don't have a motherboard that supports RDRAM. It's like, well, you should buy a new one of those too.
I mean, there's that where they don't know what your system is, but then there's also just like, oh, Intel's better for video, or you want games. AMD's the right one right now. They try to make your decision easy for you. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, based on whichever one has the highest retail cost currently that they can sell to you, because they're on commission, they get a percentage. So, yeah, whatever they can sell you. So it was a good time. Do you want to tell me more personal Fry stories before we do the highs and lows of Fry's? Just because we want to talk. This is a remembrance of the life of Fry's Electronics, and we don't want to just sweep under the rug the many negative experiences that people have also had, and that you and I have shared as well.
Yeah, I mean, on the subject of the sales associates, fortunately they left us alone, because we were obviously poor, and relative to the high spender they're going for,
Right.
And so it was more of like a museum experience. We would just be ignored, and we could kind of walk through all the rows and check out all the cases. Like, I don't know why, but like, you wanted to look at all the cases,
Yeah.
But for our father, he would be followed.
Yes.
They already got him for a new PC, let's say, and they're like, oh, you need a printer, you need a scanner, do you need like GPU? Oh, how about a TV today?
Right. And when we get a TV, you gotta get a TV stand, and you might as well get a new sofa to sit and be comfortable while you're watching your new TV, and then we can get you some snacks. Stock the pantry a little bit. You probably want to have some DVDs to watch on your new DVD player. Fry's could accommodate you, and the sales associate would stalk you across the store if you smelled blood in the water. And you and I had a different experience, because we showed up drenched in sweat, reeking from 7 mile bike ride on the hottest day of the year. Obviously dying of dehydration.
Exaggeration, but it's not.
No, it's not. We must have been a sight.
The good thing is that many of the fries customers did not have a pleasant odor, so it's not
Right.
like it was like
There
a
were
problem.
certain parts of fries that smelled worse than other parts too. Oddly, the section in the lower right, near where the registers began, where they had the hard drives, smelled really bad. It had a really musty, dense odor. People have reported that especially on busy days, the rows of software, especially productivity software, maybe the section where they actually sold Linux in boxes. Of course, I purchased my copy of Red Hat Linux in a box there as well. Also smelled very odd. And if you may recall, in the Portage store, the far back right, which had uninteresting appliances and like things from the 1970s that nobody ever bought at Fry's, and where like they didn't even like no one ever went back there, and
It was
they
often dark. They just
they didn't
light
even.
it.
I was about to say it was dark. They didn't even bother to replace the fluorescent lighting back there, but you never knew what was going down in there. It was like it was a scary place. You didn't want to be alone. It was probably haunted or something. That far right corner. I can't even remember what they sold there. I thought it might be vacuum cleaners or something, which is odd because in the Sunnyvale store, the vacuum cleaners were front and center. When you came in and looked to the left, they had all the vacuum cleaners lined up in Sunnyvale. But for whatever reason, the Portage Road store in Palo Alto, they were in this dark section where no one ever went. And the brightly illuminated part at the front was all like digital music players and PDAs and modems and things of that nature. Oh yeah, that was sort of interesting. I wanted to talk about Fry's pricing briefly while we're talking about sort of highs and lows. Now the pricing is a high if it was an advertised sale. If it was a doorbuster thing, if it was the motherboard bundle of the week, Fry's had a price that couldn't be beat. And in our other video, which you should watch, we talk about why these better than should be possible deals existed, and why they were ultimately detrimental to Fry's. But
but outside of the motherboard CPU combo, they never had much stock for those doorbusters. You would definitely show up and everything would be gone.
Well, you show up and
I think it was more to get people in the store.
But their non-sale pricing was not good. So here's the thing. It would start out maybe a little bit more than you would get from a mail order outfit. But what's interesting about Fry's prices is once that price sticker went on there, it never came off. It never changed.
I was going to say it was the MSRP from like 1 or 2 years ago.
It was the MSRP from whenever they first put it on the shelf. I swear to God, when we went there in 1996 to pick up extra RAM so we could play Quake, I went in the software aisle. I remember it's about 7 rows. You start in the middle of the store, you go 7 rows down, you take a left, they have the PC software section. I saw on the shelf a copy of Doom 2. I believe Doom 2's retail release was 1995, I think. Is that right?
94, 95, one of those.
We just talked about it on the show, and I already can't remember. It was 94 or 95. It was the first retail copy of Doom, right? Doom 2. So I saw it on the shelf, and it was marked $59.99 or something like that. It might have even been more. And I'm like, this game's been out for a little while. I would expect it to come down 10, 20 bucks or something like that. It's kind of a high price to see at Fry's. And I remember every year after I went to Fry's, I would go down the aisle and I would see that same copy of Doom 2 that obstinately sat there at its like $59.99 price for the next decade. It was never marked down. It was never clearanced. It just sat right where it was for a decade with the same price tag on it. Fry's didn't discount things. It was either there and expensive and stayed there forever, or it was, some unbelievably cheap price and it was gone immediately. And that's probably why there were so many aisles of unsold merchandise.
So let's exercise our emotions and cover the emotional highs and lows. I mean, we're talking about like very pricing, whatever.
I mean, there's no point in us giving consumer advice to people, given that the chain no longer exists. So I agree.
Yeah. So I think my highest highs, junior year of high school, I got a car, And junior is hard. You know, you're taking too many AP courses. Like, it's rough, right?
Yeah.
But because I had the car, I could just pop over to Fry's on a random Friday or whatever
Yeah.
after school.
Fry's
And
Day.
so I remember getting on release date Halo 2 and Gran Turismo 4.
Yeah.
Going home and playing. This is back when you had to go to a store to get something on release day, man.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just pop over to PSN or whatever. But they, back in those days, they had stock. They had plenty of stock. Maybe GameStonk didn't. But Fry's somehow had way too many copies
of everything.
Yeah. And it was just great to go home, play those things, kind of relax, chill out. What's your highest high?
Where I really felt like I nabbed something at Fry's. I remember at the Sunnyvale store, I just read that in the PS2 era, I don't remember what year this was. It was 2008 or something like that. I was probably still at Apple at the time. I read that like Capcom was dissolving like their Clover Studios group, which was their sort of attempt to like publish a lot of indie like auteur games, like experimental, interesting games for the PlayStation 2. This is like Killer 7, Okami, a lot of other like really notable titles. And they had said that they were dissolving the studio, and I figured, some of these games probably aren't going to be available all that long, and by the time I get around to it, there'll be collector's items. I won't be able to buy them. I'll go see if Fry's has any copies. I went to Fry's. Fry's had copies of every single one of those kind of more experimental, rare games, and I bought them all. And I still have them all in a box right behind me. I just bought every single Clover, Capcom published Clover Studios game, just off the shelf there, and have been very happy to have them ever since. I mean, getting the GeForce 256, even though I wasn't buying it for myself, I vicariously, or even perhaps quite a bit more than vicariously, got to appreciate the experience of finally putting my hand on the best graphics card, indisputably, that you could buy, and then picking it up and putting it in a shopping cart. And there aren't too many places where you could do something like that. Gosh, I mean, there's just so many things. Like, the more I think about it, I realize I've really bought like a ton of stuff from Fry's Electronics, and was always searching for excuses to go to Fry's Electronics. I had to buy a vacuum cleaner for my apartment when I started work at Apple in 2006, and I was like, hey, this is a great chance to go check out the neighborhood Fry's. And that was the first time I went to the Sunnyvale Fry's store, and immediately purchased the vacuum cleaner, and then spent a further 4 hours looking at everything else that they had to offer. The Sunnyvale store, also very interesting. There was a woman who played piano there, a classically trained pianist, Desiree Lowe. She had gone there with her boyfriend shortly after the store opened, I believe in 1998 or 1999, and they had a big Steinway piano in like the cafe section. There was a player piano and was set to play some classical pieces sort of automatically. It was sort of kind of like a curiosity / entertainment for people. And Desiree complained bitterly, as a classically trained pianist and someone who appreciated Steinway pianos, that the player piano sounded awful. Like, the way that it played the piano didn't really take advantage of the properties of the instrument. And so somehow this came to the attention of the store manager. The store manager hired Desiree to play that piano in the cafe. And so sometimes you go to Fry's and there'd be lovely classical music playing, and you'd think it was a recording. But no, it was Desiree Lowe playing the piano in the middle of the store. That's something you wouldn't always find they don't do that at Best Buy or CompUSA. Everyone had great experiences and terrible experiences there, and my heart goes out to the people who worked there and who lost job opportunity by either being shafted by Fry's or losing it because of the dissolution of the business, because they made it the experience that we can talk about. And like, I never had an experience at Fry's that was so bad that I was like, I'm never coming here again. It was just like sometimes you got additional flavor, when somebody tried to sell you memory that wasn't compatible with your computer and
Well,
things like that, you know.
it was a completely unique store, as you said. There's like no other computer store that like really was the museum of the moment. And
Yeah.
so, I think even though we had good experiences, bad experiences, it didn't really affect our overall, like, we're gonna go there, like we'll come up with some
We'll
excuse.
come up with
Like,
some reason.
you need a vacuum cleaner, but you also kind of need like a dongle or a cable, so
Right.
you just have
Or
like an
you
excuse.
ran out of AA batteries. Or you need an Odwalla and you couldn't find the right flavor at the local the local store, the local bodega. I'll go to Fry's. It's only 7 miles away. Yeah, but I really do remember us going on our bikes, me pulling out the Fry's ad from that week, pointing to a motherboard deal and saying, Alan, we're buying this. I will pay for half of it. You're coming with me. And we're getting on our bikes, showing up in absolute terrible condition, having to fight with the sales staff to get access to said bargain, jamming it into backpacks, hoping that we didn't get like hit by cars or like the Celeron falls out of your backpack or the Duron or whatever it was while we were going. Getting home, being horrible, even smellier, worse shape than we left, covered in road grime, and trying to like hastily wash off so that we can rip apart your computer and then jam in whatever ECS board we had walked off with for the 6 months that its capacitors might last until we found another $40 deal that we could go and do the whole thing over again. It was a wonderful ritual. Like, you felt like you were part of it. Like, even if we were young, we were outsiders to some of that sort of cultural nexus and shoulder rubbing of people who were really pioneering technology at the time. But we felt like we were participating in that in a meaningful way with our, Fry's excursions. So I think it's a lot of the reason why we do this show. So I think that's probably a good place to end, and before it starts to rain more heavily. Yeah. Can we say thank you, everyone who bore with us through this? I can't believe you listened to it, but obviously you must be our super fans. And we are very, very thankful to our fan base of nearly 100 people who subscribe to the show now and who follow along. And we read and love all of your comments. We're actually going to do a show responding to some of your comments. I'm sorry we've been slow in responding to those sort of textually, but we want to reply to some of our best comments in a separate video that we'll do after we finish up December of 1995, which I swear to God...
Oh, you have the sleeve.
I've got it. I'm working on it, guys. I've got Windows 95.
What is with the sleeve again?
Okay. So what's with the sleeve again? Okay, so you may notice that he's not a soccer player, or at least...
It's Ronaldo right there.
Yeah, it's Ronaldinho. Yeah. He had a lot of work done after this. But no. So it says FIFA Soccer 96. That's the lead game here. But this picture is actually one of the creatures from Interplay's computer RPG game Stonekeep, which was supposed to be on last month's disc, which unfortunately got kicked over to this month's disc. But Stonekeep is now on here. If we look at the back, Stonekeep is the first title listed, and it's not going to focus properly at all. But Stonekeep is the first game on here, and he's from that, not from FIFA 96. But yeah, we're ready to go. We're ready and raring to go. Look at it peeking out there. You're gonna want to watch that one. We'll give you all of our thoughts about where things stand in December of '95. Before we do, and then we'll do our comments show, and then we'll proceed into January 1996, which will be a monumental year in computer gaming.
The
biggest ever.
3D. Ooh.
Yeah. Anything else to say before we adjourn?
Oh, thank you, Fry's.
Yes, thank you, Fry's. Thank you, Fry's Brothers, for employing your family's fortune to create a barely competent retail empire that was probably best known as being an incredible cultural asset for the Bay Area and for some other places beyond it during a time of great technological upheaval at the turn of the millennium. It really meant a lot to people like the two of us and to so many others in the Valley. So thank you for making that possible. I think our lives would have been very different if it were not for Fry's Electronics. How would I have spent all of those weekends?